The largest section of the auction is what we call international posters. And this section contains work by some of the best-known artists, Leonardo Cappiello, Alphonse Mucha, Eugene Grasset. It includes posters from America, posters from Europe, even some posters from the Soviet Union. It's a catch-all phrase, but don't let that dissuade you. There are a lot of very important, very beautiful, very wonderful posters within this section. Lot 223, 224, and 225 are just 3 examples of the 10 posters by Jules Cheret that we have in this auction. I've singled these out because they are the most special, the most interesting, and in many ways, the most beautiful. Lot 223, the Fête de Nice, is a classic Cheret poster exhibiting one of his famous charrettes, a Pierrot, a clown, masks of drama, masks of comedy. However, it was created in 1906, which is basically 6 years after Cheret more or less gave up lithography in favor of oil painting and working with pastels. In fact, one of the things that makes this such a collector's piece is, according to the catalogue raisonné of Cheret's works, he only designed 3 other posters after this, making it really one of the last works in an extensive career that involved designing over 1,300 different posters. Lot 224 for Olympia is chronologically at the other end of the spectrum for Cheret. It's one of his earlier posters from 1893, and it's suffused with the champagne effervescence and the ebullient spirit, such unfettered joy, such happiness. It's advertising the opening of a brand new music hall, the Olympia. Cheret perfectly manages to capture the spirit of the nightclub. The poster is suggestive, but it's not lewd. He manages to show a woman with her symbols literally symbolizing her breasts, bouncing through the air, carefree, a smile on her face, her hair waving, a classic Cheret image infused with joy, really infused with the spirit of turn-of-the-century Paris. Lot 225 is another classic Cheret image from 1895. It's one of several designs he did advertising a cough drop, Pastille Girardelle. And as we can see, compared to the previous lot that we looked at, even when he shows a woman completely wrapped up, as this woman is, tripping through a snowstorm, she is still sexy, she is still winsome, she is still carefree, and she's still an irresistible spokesperson for the product at hand. In the sale, we have a small handful of very important early aviation posters. Lot 349, Porte Aviation, is one of the great posters in the history of aviation. And to understand why this poster is important, we need to understand something about the history of aviation itself. In the years following 1903, when the Wright brothers took their first historic machine-controlled flight in Kitty Hawk, the world became fascinated with flying. And the real rage became these flying shows where daredevil pilots, and back in those days, anybody who was a pilot was by default a daredevil. Daredevil pilots would meet at what was the 1909, 1910, 1911 equivalent of giant truck pulls. They would meet and they would fly their airships new to so many different people in the sky, people who had really never seen planes before, never even conceived of heavier than air flight made by a human in a machine. And these air shows were tremendously popular all throughout Europe and eventually in America too. One of the reasons that this lot, Lot 349, is so important is it's one of the earliest of the French air shows. As a poster, graphically, it really isn't that much. It's largely typography, and it shows an airfield surrounded by a laurel wreath or perhaps a symbol of wings. But if you look inside that semicircle, you'll see some very intriguing early airplanes. You'll see the grandstands that were set up to accommodate all the different people to watch these flyers, and you really get a feel for just how important and just how romantic and how captivated the public was with flight in its early years. These air shows were so popular, they took place all around Europe in little towns. Often there was a large cash prize awarded to the best aviator. And in order to attract the public to these events, artists took some wonderful liberties. And as we see in Lot 350, which is advertising an entire week of aviation in the French city of Rouen, here we see an aviator flying over the Cathedral of Rouen, but if you look closely, the statues on the cathedral are reacting in awe to this man flying in space, basically showing that even the saints could never have foreseen that man would take to the skies. This poster is incredibly detailed, and if you look closely at it, you'll see many things. First of all, it's beautiful. You have the setting sun over the town. You also see the cathedral itself under construction. And if you look closely by the river, you see many different factories with their smokestacks running. It's a tribute to the industrial age, it's a tribute to the ecclesiastical age, and it's a tribute to the early age of human flight. In the auction, we also have a small but select section of circus and magic posters. 10 different images, some very famous, some lesser known, and some lesser known but completely charming, such as this one, lot 375, by the renowned German lithography company Adolf Friedlander. They were known for their very high quality lithographs, almost always used to advertise a circus act or a magic act. In this case, it's Consul, presumably the performing monkey. Those of you who know me well realize I have an affinity for monkeys wearing plaid suits, but that's not why it's a great poster, that's just why it personally resonates for me. The poster is wonderful, A, because of the quality of the lithography, and also just because of the fantastic image. The nature of the act is actually up for debate. I don't believe he's supposed to be a funny-dressed monkey. I believe he's supposed to be a very well-dressed and dapper monkey who's basically going through life much like a human being. He's shown here on the streets of a European city, bicycling past an amazed crowd. Whatever the act was, though, the poster is very captivating and quite charming. The auction concludes with a section of sports and Olympic posters, and lot 376 is really a tremendous image. Now, it's not so great graphically, but if you read the content and see what it's advertising, it's a very, very important poster, and here's why. It's important because it's 1896, which makes it a very early American poster. It's important because from a New York point of view, it's advertising an event that took place at the original Madison Square Garden. And it's important because of the content, a sportsman's exhibition showing men hunting, showing men fishing, showing men canoeing. It really is sort of the Marlboro Man years before the Marlboro Man came into existence. A very important, very pointed, very special American image. It's also very interesting because this is advertising the second exhibition or exposition of hunting. I have been unable to find any information regarding the first exposition. So the implication is that there is an American poster out there from 1895 advertising the first one of these shows, but it has yet to surface. Not only is it unusual to find an interesting American poster from this era, it's also substantially larger than most other American posters of the era. The majority of American posters in the 1890s were used to advertise literary magazines, and the posters themselves weren't a lot larger than the cover of the magazines themselves. But in this case, the poster is 45 inches high by 29 inches wide. It's substantially larger than the average American poster from the 1890s. We're very lucky to have some extremely rare Olympic posters in the sale. In fact, we chose to put one from the 1924 Paris Olympics on the cover of the catalog. But one of the other great early Olympic pieces that we have is lot 386, which is advertising the Olympic Games in Stockholm in 1912. You might notice that rather strategically placed ribbon in the center of the poster, and that was actually put there after the fact. The original design had the athlete naked. Historically, in ancient Greece when the Olympics were held, the athletes were all in the nude, and the artist chose to depict nude athletes for this contemporary 1912 poster, and the censors told him that he couldn't do it, so the only way he could go and save himself and cover the manhood of this athlete was to go back in and put in this rather obvious yet demure ribbon. It's interesting to note about the Olympic posters that because the Olympics are by nature an international event, the posters exist in many different languages. This is obviously the French version, and there would have been an English version, a German version, a Swedish version, basically versions to hang in all different countries of Europe advertising the Olympic Games. One of the reasons the poster market has grown so much is that the images are so accessible and the ranges of images you can come across are so diverse. And for this winter auction, we've really tried to put together a collection of posters that reflects these wonderful aspects of the poster market.